Star Trek, The Next Generation. The Best and the Brightest. Chapter 9. And it's only for 2 weeks, Jamie finished in a rush. Just think, you get a trip to Ramizad and you can help out an old friend. Bobby Ray protested. I'd stick out like a purple Tomshi in the middle of San Francisco. Enor would spot us in a millisecond. I don't want to hide from Maul, Jamie reminded the Rex. We'll sort of run into her on the trip. Come on, it's my last chance to spend time with her before she graduates. Then go with Enor. What do you need me for? Jamie picked up the spring ball, turning it over in her hands. She wouldn't agree. She would think it's encouraging me. Thankfully, Bobby Ray wasn't the type to question other people's motives. That was the main reason her choice of companions was so limited. All of her other friends would try to talk her out of it. But Bobby Ray stuck to the point at hand. I might go to Brightest 5 for vacation. Why don't you ask Starsa? She likes running around in the heat. Starsa would die. Ramizad has 2 G's heavier gravity with lighter air pressure. How about Titus? Bobby Ray suggested. Titus? Jamie threw the spring ball against the wall and caught it in mid-bounce. By the time he stopped laughing, it would be time to come home. Besides, he's too busy getting ready for his field assignment on the Enterprise this summer. That's right, that lucky dog. He'll be fighting the Maquis, maybe even going into the Gamma Quadrant. That's what I wish I was doing this summer. The Ramizad trip is only for 2 weeks, Jamie urged. Come on, Jefferson, we almost died together, remember? I stuck by you in the caves. Can't you help me out now? Ramizad, huh? He asked, thoughtfully examining the sheath on one claw. Isn't that where all those ruins are? Some of the oldest in the galaxy, Jamie quickly agreed. I hate ruins. He looked at her consideringly. But I don't suppose I have anything better to do. Thanks, you won't regret it. Once we hook up with Molinor, you can do whatever you want. Sleep all day if you'd like. Jamie bounced the spring ball off the ceiling on her way out. Hey, that's my ball, Bobby Ray called after her. Jamie tossed it back. Just be ready to go the week after finals, she ordered. And don't tell anyone. Molinor knew what Jamie was up to the first moment she saw the young woman accompanied by the Rex, filing off the afternoon Airbus after the other tourists. Bobby Ray looked irritated behind his large sunglasses. He carried a porta-cooler, and perched on top of his head was a wide-brimmed shade hat. Jamie was busy looking around the courtyard and hostel complex, blinded by the brilliant Ramizad sun. Welcome to Ramizad, a tall Ram greeted the tourists. The Ram differed from the Izad only in their dominant attitude and slightly broader noses. This way to a cool drink and a place to lay your heads. On Ramizad, we are here to serve you. The other tourists straggled after the Ram, dazed from the sudden heat after their trip down from the orbital station. Jamie lingered, looking around, but Molinor stayed in the shadows. You didn't say it would take 32 hours to get here, Bobby Ray complained loud enough that the other tourists turned to look at them. Be quiet, Jamie sighed. I'll get you an Arcturian fizz somewhere, then maybe you'll stop complaining for 2 minutes. Maul knew their meeting was inevitable, so she went to the front of the balcony overlooking the courtyard. Ah, the happy travelers. The way Jamie's eyes lit up made Maul soften her tone. You're probably the last 2 people I would have guessed were interested in the Ramizad ruins. Bobby Ray flipped his large, furry hand, his sunglasses sliding down his nose. Call it a whim. Jamie tried to ignore him. I've always been interested in the ancient humanoid cultures. Remember after you found that panspermia fossil? I wrote a history paper on the unity of the cultures on Kuril, Indri 7, and Sothis 3. I remember, Mal said. Most of the other tourists had drifted from the courtyard, proceeding to the hostel desk to pick up their room assignments. Jamie started walking sideways so she could grin up at Mal and Orr. I guess I'll see you later. Mal shook her head after the incongruous couple. What had possessed Jamie to bring Bobby Ray? The big orange Rex ambled toward the interior, oblivious to the stares of the alien children with their parents. Mal had already noted the way kids and nubile young women were drawn to the fuzzy Rex. Jamie gave a cheery wave as she went under the portico. Mal sighed again, feeling herself pull back when she really didn't want to. Without a doubt, Jamie was the best friend she'd ever had. Mal just wished she had asked to join her on this trip instead of running after her. But to be fair, she had never given Jamie any reason to suspect that she would have agreed to go on a trip together. Actually, Mal wished she had thought of it herself. It was about time they confronted this issue between them, and a ramble through the ruins would have been perfect. Yet now, without a choice in the matter, Mal wanted to get out of the hostel before Jamie cornered her in her room. The chase was on, and as always, Mal and Orr was running. The heavy piers rose into the shadows, with the vaults lit by a few strategic spotlights. Mal and Orr wandered among the ruins, consulting her travel pad and craning her neck to see the notable elements of the construction. Jamie yawned as she trailed after her friend, reconsidering whether this had been such a smart idea. With her eidetic memory, Mal and Orr soaked up cultures like water, always wanting to know more. Jamie was ready to return to the beach, where they could have a long, relaxing swim. Yet Mal seemed content to endlessly examine the small sculptures, alien heads and exotic animals, leaves and flowers that were carved into the huge stone blocks. Mal went through another one of the narrow slits in the wall, while Jamie sat down to wait in a niche, figuring it was close enough to a bench for all intents and purposes. She sat kicking her heels for a long time, but when Mal still didn't reappear, she decided it wouldn't hurt to prod her friend along a little. But the slit didn't lead to a side chamber like all the others. It was the entrance to yet another underground maze. Jamie checked down a few turns of the maze and panicked when she took a wrong passageway and got caught in a dead end. The mazes could take hours to traverse, and the tourists had been warned time and again not to go into one without a tricorder. Mal had her pad guide, and she was long gone. Slowly, carefully, Jamie retraced her steps and returned to the entrance. When she was no longer afraid of having to spend hours stuck in the maze, waiting for the Izad caretakers to perform the evening censer sweep, she groaned and leaned her head against the cool stone. She had been so patient. All she wanted was for Mal to see that she had been loyal, that she cared about the things Mal cared about. She would do whatever it took for Mal to give them a chance, just one, to see if they belonged together. "Arg!" Jamie exclaimed, giving the wall a swift kick. A stone gave under her foot, and there was a soft flop, and a small chunk of the decorated wall landed in the layers of rock dust on the floor. Jamie instinctively glanced around, hoping no one had seen it, but the room was empty, as were the next ones. She bent down and picked up the round object, turning it over in her hand. It was a beaked face of some sort, broken off behind the ears. On the wall there was a ragged spot between two other beak faces where it used to belong. She tried to put it back in place, but it wouldn't stay. Then voices came from the maze behind her, and she stuffed the head into her pouch, backing up as a handful of laughing tourists emerged from the narrow slit. "You know the way back to the hostel?" a bullying female asked Jamie. Jamie couldn't begin to explain, but she could backtrack the path she and Maul had taken. She felt like one of the obliging Izad guides, silently leading a group of chattering tourists through assembly halls where political theory had been argued tens of thousands of years ago. When Jamie emerged from the ruins, Bobby Ray was seated at a courtyard table, sipping from a tall bulb of something icy pink. His blue and yellow striped gunshade was tied to the back of his chair at a rakish angle, protecting his bulk from the harsh sun. When he saw Jamie trailing disconsolately back to the hostel, he called her over. "Look what I found." Bobby Ray held up a small ceramic figure about 30 centimeters high, painted a ruddy orange. "It's a genuine Kurlan Naskos. It only costs 2 slips of latinum." It only took one look for Jamie to dismiss the statue. The Kurls made Naskos. That's on Kurl, a different planet in another solar system, in case you hadn't noticed. "Oh." Bobby Ray glanced at his Naskos. "My mother will like it anyway." "Have you done anything but shop and drink with the other tourists?" Jamie demanded. "Haven't you even set foot in the ruins?" "Not yet," Bobby Ray said, quite pleased with himself. "Excuse me?" a small voice inquired. Jamie turned to see an Izad, standing slightly out of arm's reach, hands folded in supplication as usual. There were far more Izad than Rom. They were the cleaners, servants, cooks, attending to the needs of the tourists and caring for the ruins. "Yes?" Jamie asked, surprised to be addressed by one. "You have something that doesn't belong to you?" "Oh!" Jamie scrambled with her waist bag. "I was going to give this to someone." The Izad silently held out its hand and accepted the beaked head. Its fingers caressed the head like it knew every chiseled crevice. Bobby Ray raised one brow at Jamie. "Stealing the artifacts, Cadet Miranda?" "Stealing? No." Jamie appealed to the solemn-faced Izad. "I was going to give it back. I hope I didn't ruin it. It was an accident." The Izad glanced at the beaked head, then silently turned and walked away. "I was going to return it," Jamie told Bobby Ray, before he could say another word. "I couldn't just leave it lying on the floor in there. I had to bring it back to give it to someone, didn't I?" Bobby Ray made a show of removing his Naskos from the table and tucking it safely back in his bag. "Sure, Jamie, sure." The next day, Molly Knorr invited Bobby Ray to come on the tour of the underwater ruins. Jamie almost choked when he blithely agreed. Wiping her mouth, she said, "It's underwater, Bobby Ray. Water, as in we're underneath it." He daintily stuck an enormous piece of meat pie into his mouth. With his mouth full, he said, "I don't care, as long as I'm not in the water." Moll could tell that Jamie took perverse joy in the change in Bobby Ray's self-satisfied expression once the tour bubble began to sink underwater. The force field held back the green sea, but you could poke your finger through and feel how warm it was. Bobby Ray shuddered as Jamie slowly shoved her entire hand through. "It'll break if you keep doing that," he nervously chided her. "Stay on dry land if you don't want to get wet," she retorted. The two bickered the entire ride to the underwater grottos, while Moll tried to listen to the narration of the geophysical conditions that led to the flooding of a third of the local ruins. Neither of them noticed anything unusual until Moll protested. "Why didn't we go into the amphitheater?" She craned her head to look back at one of the most spectacular ruins, which her stasis bubble had simply sailed right past. Some of the other tourists were protesting too, until they had to be shushed in order to hear the Izad at the controls. "There is a malfunction," it said timidly. Cries rose from the passengers. Something's wrong? A malfunction? Someone let out a small scream of fright. Eek! Relax, Jamie ordered Bobby Ray, trying to remove his hands, which had clenched around her arm on hearing the news. Meanwhile, Molly Nora got up to go to the front. What's wrong? She asked the Izod. There is a malfunction? It patiently repeated. Moll had found that the Izod had a common subtle tic of allowing their voices to go up at the end of a sentence, making everything they said sound like a question. Moll attributed it to their socially subservient position. Where are we going? She asked. We will go to the nearest port? The Izod offered. Should you surface? Moll asked, glancing at the green arch of water held back by the stasis bubble. The Izod merely shook its head, seemingly unworried about a stasis failure. Moll returned to her seat, telling the others, There's nothing to worry about. We're being taken to the nearest port. The tense whispering in the tour bubble didn't lighten until they surfaced at the port. Moll was pleased to see Jamie patting Bobby Ray's leg occasionally, acknowledging his fear of being underwater when a malfunction was occurring. They wouldn't be able to get him out of the hostel after this. But Bobby Ray got safely out of the bubble without wetting a hair, though he seemed subdued by the scare. Their entire group was a little disconsolate as they trailed after the Izod guide. Moll wondered how they were going to get Bobby Ray back in a bubble to return when Jamie edged closer and whispered, We'll have to find some other way to get him back. Moll was pleased to have her thought voiced. There are Airbuses everywhere. We should be able to arrange something for him. Molinor blamed herself afterwards for being so concerned about Bobby Ray that her usually superb attention was distracted from what was going on. But the Izod guide was quite natural about standing aside and gesturing for them to enter one of the massive doors of the Colosseum ruin. Inside, their group merged with the larger, milling group of mixed tourists, all confused and babbling questions over one another. What's going on? Moll asked, too late to stop them from entering. Jamie immediately turned and tried to get back out, but the entryway was blocked by a double force field. There were two Izod at the other end, patiently funneling more tourists into the cavernous space. The press of people pushed them deeper inside, and they were unable to stop the influx. Arching overhead and cutting the harsh sun was the sustaining blue light of the force field, holding the ruin together. It's Izod! Iram cried out, holding his hands up to stop the angry questions. A scattered group of Ram had gathered at the center of the enormous Colosseum. The Ram were rapidly trying to join forces against the hundreds of tourists who were discovering they were trapped against their will. What do they want? Jamie called out. Why did they do this to us? But she was drowned out by other voices, louder and closer to the Ram. One was deferred to by the other Ram. He stepped onto a fallen block of stone to say, I am Oxitar, Senior Manager of the Regional Tourism Board. Cries greeted his announcement. What's going on? When can we go back to the hostel? My friend needs water. Others shushed the voices, trying to hear Oxitar. The Izod won't talk to us, but there have been rumors for cycles that they were unhappy with the way our world is run. We all work hard to make Ramizad a pleasant place for people like yourselves to come, and we will continue to do so. This isn't a commercial, someone yelled. Oxitar held up his hands. I'm sure this will be worked out soon, if you could be patient and let us deal with the Izod. He bent and listened briefly to one of the other Ram. You can find water in the rear of this building. Please be courteous to those in need. I will speak to the Izod, and will return to tell you as soon as I have information. Oxitar jumped down from the block, agile like all the Ramizad, despite the age lines on his forehead and ultra-thickening of his nose bridge. He was surrounded by Ram as the small group moved through the tourists, sullenly parting to let them through. Nice vacation, Bobby Ray told Jamie. Stuck in the middle of a Local revolution. Maul didn't like how long Jamie was gone. After the Rom returned to say that Izod wouldn't communicate with them, Jamie had thought for a long time. Her brow furrowed. Every time Maul tried to speak to her, she shook her head. Finally, she had said she was going to try to talk to the Izod. When Maul offered to go with her, she acted like she would have loved to say yes, but she refused. They may feel less threatened by one person alone. Threatened? Bobby Ray had slyly asked. He was lying back on a blanket that padded a large section of the original benching in the Coliseum. They're the ones holding us hostage. Maul lost sight of Jamie, which was a difficult thing to do in those red tights and with a black and white checked ultra-short set. You can type this, but you can't say it. Jamie wasn't one to dress down when she was off duty, but she was so flamboyantly personable that people usually forgave the assault on their eyes. At least Maul did. Jamie appeared, then disappeared for long stretches of time as she went down various entryways, trying to talk to the Izod. When she finally returned, she was grinning like she'd just aced a biochemistry test. "You want to get out of here?" she asked. "They're letting us go?" Maul replied, startled at her success. "Only 3 of us, if we agree to help them," Jamie clarified. "Help them?" Bobby Ray asked. At the same time, Maul said, "You were able to get them to trust you?" Jamie shrugged. "Enough, anyway. I told them I'd been training as a Starfleet negotiator." "What?" Bobby Ray demanded. "It's sort of true. I've negotiated family fights plenty of times." She smoothed her hair and resettled the clip. "Anyway, the Izod know they'll have to deal with Starfleet sooner or later because of all these Federation citizens are holding." "The Federation won't negotiate in a hostage situation," Bobby Ray protested, squirming into a more comfortable position on the hard bench. Maul figured he was outraged by Jamie's utter audacity. "The Izod are wrong to keep us prisoners here." "The Izod have never been given a chance," Jamie insisted. "And they know that releasing Starfleet personnel, us, will show goodwill." "What do they want?" Maul asked. "They don't like how the ruins are being treated," Jamie said bluntly. "All the money is going to support the Rom elite rather than being spent on maintaining the artifacts. The place is crumbling out from under them. At the very least, they need a weather satellite to keep the temperature swings to a minimum." "Is this about a weather satellite?" Bobby Ray blinked a few times. "You mean I'm napping on a stone because they want sunshine all the time?" "Drop it," Jamie ordered, out of the side of her mouth. Appealing to Maul, she added, "These Izod don't have anybody capable of negotiating with the Rom or the Federation. Apparently their plan has been boiling for decades until the entire Izod populace simply cracked. I'd hate to see them stomped back down when they're finally standing up for their rights. With your help, maybe we can do something." Maul nodded. "I want to hear more about their grievances, and I'll need my tricorder to tap the Federation database for precedent." "Hello? Excuse me," Bobby Ray interrupted, finally swinging his legs over the edge and sitting up. "Aren't you forgetting something? What about the Prime Directive? We aren't supposed to interfere in an internal matter." Jamie met his eyes. "If I was on a mission, I would do whatever my superiors ordered. It wouldn't be my place to do anything else. But we're not on a mission. I'm here as Jamie Miranda, on my own personal time, and I won't sit by and let an injustice be done." Maul couldn't have been more impressed. "I'll do whatever I can." They both looked at Bobby Ray. "What are you looking at me for?" he asked. "You want out of here, don't you?" Jamie asked. Bobby Ray got up. "Sure, show me the way." Jamie put her hand on his shoulder. ushering him toward the entryway where she had appeared. They've had injuries. Some of the ROM fought back when the tourism board hall was stormed. You've had one semester pre-med, Bobby Ray protested. You think you're going to act like a doctor? No, you are. I'm going to be busy as a negotiator. Bobby Ray stopped dead. You can't be serious. They need another pair of hands, Jamie retorted. I volunteered you. It's the least you can do, Jefferson. He smoothed his whiskers irritably. Are you sure the Academy won't get upset? Positive, Jamie assured him. They'll be mad if you don't help. Bobby Ray grumbled, but he actually had a good time assisting in the hospital. The Izad were so grateful for any crumb they were tossed, since they were accustomed to having to do all the work. Besides, there was an elaborate gymnasium attached to the hospital for physical therapy, an integral part of the recuperation for agile Ramizad physiology, so Bobby Ray spent several hours a day in the gym, swinging and clambering among the unusual arrangements of bars and swings. In the early evening, he would grab a nap on the roof, waking up feeling refreshed for the spectacular meals that the Izad continued to prepare. It took a few days before he realized there were 3 Izad cleaning his room every morning, trapped in the habit of catering to hordes of tourists. For the first time in memory, the Ramizad ruins were closed, but the Izad continued to work as hard as if there were thousands of people to pamper. The Enterprise herself was in orbit, leading the negotiations. Cadet Enor and Cadet Miranda had managed to place themselves in a very enviable position, but Bobby Ray still shuddered at the risk they were taking. If the Izad got irrational and decided to get rid of a few tourists to prove their point, Jamie and Maul would end up on the losing side. But they had maintained the balance and were getting full credit for representing the Izad in these negotiations. He followed their progress on the Federation News Service, piped in live to his deluxe suite, appropriated from the now empty quarters around the hospital. The other tourists were still quarantined in huge groups in various key ruins. Even the ROM wouldn't risk destroying the ruins by turning off the force field supporting them. They had never considered the fact that the force fields could also prevent anyone from transporting out people who were trapped inside. Bobby Ray had to admire the Izad's tactical advantage. Who would have thought they were capable of such a neat coup? He chuckled to himself, stretching under the sunset. This was his favorite part of the Ramizad day, sunny but not scorching. Better enjoy yourself while you can, Jamie said behind him. He lazily rolled over to watch Jamie and Enor come up the stairs to the roof arm in arm. Something had happened in the past week. They seemed to have come to an understanding. Far be it from him to pry, but when 2 humanoids started spending every second together, their faces so close they were practically rubbing noses, you had to figure they were good friends. What's the rush? Bobby Ray asked. Are you planning another revolution? No, but this one is over, Jamie told him, relaxed and satisfied, as he had rarely seen her. The Izad are releasing the hostages. So it's over? He asked, feeling oddly let down. He had liked the empty sidewalks and squares, like the ruins should be, as if they were suspended out of time. I thought revolutions took a long time. Not well-organized ones, Maul told him. We still have some serious points to negotiate, Jamie admitted, but the bulk of the work is completed. The Izad will gain their rightful voice in ruling their own world. The ruins were Izad, you know, long before the Rom came here. But they can live together if they cooperate. So it will be a few more days? Bobby Ray asked. At least, Molinor agreed. Good. Bobby Ray settled back, towel over his eyes. But he did peek once or twice, watching Moll and Jamie standing by the balustrade, leaning against each other as the sun went down. Oh, congratulations, Moll murmured to Jamie. It's because of you the Zod had a chance. Not true, Jamie denied. They were ready for this move. We both helped is all. Bobby Ray groaned loud enough for them both to turn with irritated expressions. Then he grinned, wrinkling his nose. It's about time, he told them enigmatically, and he rolled over, covering his eyes again. The next day, Bobby Ray did go with Jamie to the Capitol building to witness the new combined government take over the reins of power. Now that the agreements had been made, Jamie and Moll were pulling out of the spotlight. Moll wasn't even going to be present. She had been called up to the Enterprise to complete some of the last details. Bobby Ray could tell Jamie was dying of envy and would have preferred that job to this merely ceremonious one. I've never been on the Enterprise, Jamie said for what must have been the 8th time. All of their negotiations had taken place in the Capitol building at the Zod's request. The inarticulate ceremony droned on below, witnessed by dozens of sulky Roms surrounded by hundreds of the Zod clerks who did the real work. But Bobby Ray and Jamie were far enough away from the hurried exchange of keys to the force fields or the computer files, Bobby Ray wasn't exactly sure, that he could ask, "What happened with you two?" "Oh, so you noticed." Jamie smiled to herself as she smoothed her bright pink shirt. "Everyone has noticed," he assured her. Jamie waved him off, knowing he was exaggerating. Instead, she nudged him to look out the nearest window. They were up high enough to see down into the street, where a sudden flow of cranky tourists were running through the streets or hanging on to Airbuses, intent on getting their belongings and getting out before the Zod changed their minds. Bobby Ray thought their panic was comical, but then he had been dealing with the mild-mannered Zod for over a week. "Have I told you how much I enjoyed vacationing in a revolution?" Jamie snorted, trying not to laugh at a stout colonist from the terraformed planet of Browder 4. He was running after an Airbus, trying to get a foothold on the running board. "At least he can't complain that the Zod haven't fed us well," she whispered. "Did you hear about the buffet they set up in the Coliseum last night?" Bobby Ray was too curious to let the matter of Molyneux slide. He had been there when Jamie began to get misty-eyed every time Enor spoke, and he had seen Jamie unfailingly nurture their relationship no matter how many obstacles Enor put in their path. "So what did happen with you two? Don't tell me it's just a wartime romance, the spur of danger and all that." He watched her carefully, but her expression remained serene, smiling down at the chaos in the streets. "No, I think what happened is she finally had a chance to see me for who I really am, a chance to see that she could rely on me. I think we both realized we're a good team." "So it's serious between you two?" "Serious as they come," Jamie agreed. "Titus will die when he hears about this," Bobby Ray laughed. Now he couldn't wait to get back to the academy to spread the word that Jamie, the woman who never took no for an answer, had finally bagged her quarry. Woohoo! Yeehaw! A-doo-ka-doo-ka-doo-ka-doo! Hoo-hoo-hoo! Jamie didn't see Moll at all the final day of the Zod Revolution, as it was being called. Moll called late from on board the ship and told Jamie that she was calling from guest quarters, where she was planning to stay overnight. Jamie wished it would be reasonable to ask to beam up too, but she was in her nightie and practically in bed already. "I met an old friend of yours," Moll added. Jamie was feeling slightly left out of all this talk of what Commander Data had said or how Captain Picard had talked to Maul over lunch for almost half an hour about the Ramizad ruins. Jamie would give her right arm to meet these quasi-mythical people she'd heard about for years, but they had agreed that Ensign Enor was a better choice to interface with Starfleet, while the more personal Jamie dealt with Izad. "You mean Nevrio?" Jamie asked, remembering their old quad mate had gotten duty last winter on the Enterprise. "No, I did see him, but I meant someone else." Jamie thought for a moment. "Who else do I know on the Enterprise?" "Guinan, the bartender." Jamie had to laugh. "That's right! The night I was tracking Elma. I bet I didn't make much of an impression on her." "Actually, I think she figured you out immediately." Molinor ducked her head to smile. Shy as always. "She congratulated me on knowing a good thing when I ran into it." "Thanks," Jamie said, feeling mollified, and more than a little flattered. Molinor was talking about her in 10 forward. "Do you want to come up to the ship tomorrow morning?" I'll ask casually. "Do I?" Jamie gave her a look. "You know I do." "Tomorrow then, 0800. Be at the beam down point." Molinor hesitated, looking closely at Jamie's face. "I have a surprise for you." Maul could tell Jamie was bursting with joy to finally be on the Enterprise. One of her great-great-aunts had served on the Enterprise B, the Excelsior-class starship, and a third cousin had served on the Enterprise C briefly, just before the ship disappeared under the command of Captain Rachel Garrett. But Jamie had told her that no Miranda had had a permanent post on board the Starfleet flagship since then. Maul had felt guilty being on the Enterprise, knowing how much it would mean to Jamie, who really deserved all of the credit for the negotiations. "Titus is so lucky getting a field assignment on the Enterprise," Jamie said soon after she beamed up. "Too bad he isn't here yet, and we have to stop by and say hi to Nevrio." "He's down in the geophysics lab," Maul agreed. She gestured toward Jamie's bodysuit. An acid green swirled through with white streaks. When she moved, it made Maul's eyes cross. "Nice outfit." Jamie shrugged, glancing at Maul's plain black coverall. "You know me. I don't want anyone to forget me." "Don't worry. I'll introduce you to everyone." Molinor gave Jamie the grand tour, introducing her to the officers they encountered along the way, and making a special trip to sickbay to let the pre-med student meet Dr. Beverly Crusher. Jamie took the doctor's hand so hard that Crusher winced as she pulled it away, but she smiled and said, "Don't worry about starting late, Jamie. Tyler Brannigan was number 1 in my graduating class from Starfleet Medical, and he decided he wanted to get into medicine in his last year at the academy. He said he had to cram 3 years of pre-med into a solid year and a half of study." "That's what I'm doing now," Jamie admitted. "Welcome to the world of medicine," Crusher told her. "You'll never get another good night's sleep." Jamie was radiant by the time Maul took her to Deck 16, through a door into one of the spacious crew quarters. Since they were on the bottom of the saucer section, the long wall slanted inward, providing a startling view of the brown and red planet of Ramizad. "Oh," Jamie breathed in admiration. "Is this where you stayed last night?" Without waiting for an answer, she wandered into the adjoining room and bounced down on the bed. "Does everyone get such a big place to live, or is this just a guest suite?" "These are my quarters," Molinor told her. It took a moment for her meaning to sink in. "You were offered a post on the Enterprise?" "Yes, Captain Picard told me last night." Jamie made an inarticulate sound, rushing over to hug her, but her voice broke as she said, "Nobody deserves it more than you." Maul kissed her and hugged her back. "Aww." They were both thinking of having to part, but leave it to Jamie to put that aside, knowing how important this was to her. "When do you have to go?" Jamie asked. "We leave tonight." At Jamie's silence, she hurried on, a catch in her own voice. "There's no need for me to go back to the academy. I can have my things sent on." When Jamie was still silent, she added, "We both knew I would be leaving on assignment once I graduated." "Yes, but the Enterprise," Jamie said. "You'll be at all ends of the Alpha Quadrant." Molyneux cleared her throat. "I trust you to track me down, no matter where I go." They both grinned at that. Then they hugged each other again. Moll felt so reassured by that simple contact, by knowing how much Jamie truly loved her. She hadn't realized how long she had relied on her best friend to always be there for her. Now they were partners. Maybe someday I'll get a post on the Enterprise too," Jamie said valiantly, wiping her eyes. "But I have years of school ahead." "We both have a lot of hard work to do." Moll pulled back, giving Jamie a shake. "But this isn't the end for us. We're just beginning. You remember that."